All right, well, welcome to another episode of Traveling Through History. We're really glad you were here with us tonight. We have a special episode for you. I've been really excited about this one to talk about a book called The Potusgeists. And The Potusgeists is written by author Will Worsley, who I affectionately call Uncle Bill, since he actually is my uncle. And this is his third novel in a series, and he's here tonight to join us and talk about the book. How you doing, Uncle Bill?
Oh, I'm doing just great, Thomas.
Really appreciate you coming tonight and joining the program and telling us about this great new book.
Well, thank you for having me. It's a great podcast, and I watch it regularly.
Awesome. That's great. And what's interesting, just a little story about Traveling Through History, it actually was born out of my assistance to you in researching for this book. So this podcast wouldn't have even existed without the Potusgeists. So that's a little tidbit that the fans can enjoy. So, Bill, tell us a little bit about yourself, your background, your career. I know you started as a writer right out of school, and then you went into the investing business and then back to writing. So tell us a little bit about that evolution.
Sure. I started out intending to be a writer, an editor, and after getting a BA and an MA in English, I ended up at Time Life Books in Alexandria, Virginia, as on different series that they had. They were nonfiction series, of course. This is back in the 70s and early 80s. And I was going to stay with them, but they started having a lot of business problems in the early 80s. So I decided to make a career change, and I got an MBA. And that led to ending up in finance, in investment management later. And I ended up running money for pension funds and in the South, in Atlanta, and then later in Arlington, Virginia. I was overseeing pensions, endowments, and foundations for large institutional clients. Then I retired after many years, but I always wanted to go back to writing and editing after I retired, so that's what I did. And so as soon as I retired a few years ago, I started working on my first novel, which was actually about investing. I had seen some funny things going on that I thought would make a good satire. I'd seen a lot of woke investing going on, ESG and things like that. So I wrote a novel called Investing in Vain. That's where I started with the character that ended up in the Potusgeists. She was a minor character she was actually the ex-governor, the governor of California in the Investing in Vain. Mm. And she was making a lot of trouble behind the scenes. She didn't get much of it. She kind of had a bit part. She was only there for about 3 or 4 pages, but she was making a lot of trouble for the main characters. And I did a second novel called The Cougar Candidate, and in that novel I made her the protagonist. So she got a big promotion in book 2. And then in the sequel, Cougar Candidate is about a Patty Pitypander is her name, the ex-governor of California, and she's running for president, and she's being pursued by a young reporter that she's simultaneously falling in love with. And then I needed to follow that up with a third book. I wanted to use Patty in a third book and that's where the Potusgeists came from, is that third book. Initially, the Potusgeists was going to be just a sequel about Patty's first horrible year in the White House. Mm-hmm. And to make it more horrible for her, I thought about introducing the idea of ghosts, because I remembered that the White House is haunted. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of ghost stories about the White House. A lot of people don't know that, but there's some. So I started mixing that into the plot, and as I started writing the book, it became clear to me that the ghosts were the most interesting part, and they were more interesting than what I had originally planned. So I tore the plot apart and decided to make them the focus of the book. And the more I made them the focus of the book, the better the book was, and the more I enjoyed writing it. So I just fell in love with the idea of writing about a bunch of ghostly presidents and first ladies haunting this new president who walks into the White House and doesn't have any idea about what she's about to walk into.
That's fantastic. I'll tell you, it's an incredible book. It's hilarious. It is satirical like you intended, but it's also has this whole history bent to it. How did you think about that, and how did you kind of approach it from the standpoint of bringing history into the book along with the satire?
Well, I wanted to make it as rich in history as I could make it and still have it be a novel that flowed as a novel. So primarily it's a novel and it's a satirical novel, but I put as much history in it as I thought it could bear. I didn't want to bog it down. And so, and I had so much history to choose from. That was one of the hardest parts, frankly, was figuring out what to emphasize, because I had obviously over more than 40 presidents and first ladies to choose from, more than 200 years of history. I could have Patty haunted by all kinds of people. So I really had to pick and choose. That was really the hardest part of getting the plot going, and I had to make so many choices.
So, in terms of Patty herself, how much did she change throughout the three books? What was her evolution overall? How did you change the character? I know she was kind of a bit part in the first book, but the second book, of course, she carried.
Right.
Third book, like you said, in some way, she's overshadowed by the Potusgeists. But how does she
Yes.
change through that process?
Well, she's kind of a lightweight kind of screwball type anyway. She's a spoiled billionaire's wife, first of all, and her husband, she's estranged from her husband. Her husband is a casino billionaire who hangs out in Las Vegas and globetrots around the world and kind of ignores her. So she's lonely, and in both books, The Cougar Candidate and in The Potusgeists, she's kind of a lonely character she lusts after young guys, which is a huge problem for her in The Cougar Candidate, and less so in the Potusgeists. But anyway, she got to the job because she had a lot of money behind her with her husband helping her get to be governor of California, and then she had a lot of help from certain people in the Democratic Party. So she gets to the White House and she's totally unprepared, and that's the whole theme of the book of the Potusgeists. Is that the book opens with Thomas Jefferson and John Adams watching her at her inauguration on television and trying to figure out what on earth this woman is doing as president. She looks like a nincompoop. And they decide that she is a nincompoop, and that they've had it with the steady decline of presidents and in the quality of presidents over the years, and they're fed up. So they decide it's time to act to save the republic. And so they attempt to fix her, basically. And that starts a sequence of events that turns Washington upside down.
And I think you get it across really well in the beginning about how much they really are worried for the country. This isn't just like a passing thing. It's not a joke.
No.
They really are concerned for the country.
No, they think that she's going to ruin the United States. So they've never seen anybody like her before. So although they say that her predecessor was pretty bad too, but at least he knew he was bad. He was totally corrupt too, but she unfortunately doesn't know how bad she is. So,
I know you've always loved history. Have you always been fascinated with the White House? Was that part of this book, that you really wanted to write something about the White House, in the White House, on the White House grounds?
No, it really just evolved. I'm telling you, I wanted to put her in the White House because she became president, and I wanted to have, like I said, it just evolved from the idea that she would have a bad first year and it'd be kind of funny. And then when I thought about the ghost just took over. That's basically what happened to the plot. I never intended for it to be originally about the ghost. It just was such a good idea, and it was such a rich idea because it allowed me to go into any part of American history I wanted. And I could say anything I wanted, and we just had so much potential in the history of it. So that's how it really happened. And then I realized, my God, this book is going to be so hard to write because I have to have so much research just to do it. I have to know all kinds of things about historical characters, and I need it fast. And I can't read 200 books to write this. I'll never get it done. So I realized what I need is a bunch of short synopses, basically, of a lot of presidents, and that's where you came in and helped me.
Absolutely. I had a really good time doing it. It was so much fun. You would give me little assignments, give me these 2 or 3 presidents, and I'd give it to you in about a week. And
Yeah.
I had so much fun researching each of the individual presidents. It was really fun. So tell us the mechanics of writing. Like what's it like to put a book out like this in 2 or 3 years? What are the actual steps and what do
Well,
you work your way through? What are the actual mechanics?
that was one area where I had an advantage because I had worked at Time Life Books, and one of my roles there for a period of time was the book manager, where it was actually my job to invent a book, and then to shepherd the book through all the stages of production. So we had a staff of about 25 people back then, and we would put out about 5 or 6 books a year, and it was an amazing process. Basically, Time Life Books was kind of like a book factory.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was a book manager once, and I discovered I was pretty good at that. And you had to invent, you had to basically understand how each part of the book would work and put the whole thing together in your head, and then organize the whole thing, and then organize 25 people to produce it. So that helped me a lot going into this, because I had that skill in my head already.
Mm-hmm.
What I do with a novel is the first thing I do is write down the concept of the novel, what the story is. I just take out a Word document basically and just start tapping on the computer and try to write out what I think the story ought to be. And then I embellish it, and then I embellish it, and I embellish it. And once I've got an outline or story going, then I go into a program called Scrivener,
Mm-hmm.
which is designed for long form writing, like novels.
Mm-hmm.
And I break down the plot into scenes, and Scrivener's great for that, because then you can manipulate the scenes, you can move them around, you can add them, delete them. It's really easy to do stuff with Scrivener when you're writing a novel. So that's my second step, and then I inevitably, the plot needs work as I go. Some scenes that I thought were really smart don't turn out to be so good, and then others occur to me as I go. I insert them. So it's a creative, destructive process, especially with the Potusgeists. This book went through a whole lot. I left practically, a third of the book on the cutting room floor. So there were a lot of scenes got thrown out because they just didn't work. And sometimes I write a scene and I'm going, no, this tone doesn't work. So that's a big part of it. So you get through the first draft. The first draft is usually the hardest thing to do. Just get it out. And I've learned by doing 3 of these that the best thing you can do is just spit it out. Get it out on paper as fast as you can. And this is the hard part for me because I was an editor. Try not to edit it while you go. Just write. And I'm not very good at that maintaining that discipline, because I keep on editing when I write. But anyway, so once you get through the first draft, then you've got something to cut on. This book went through 9 drafts, nine edits. The one before that went through 17. I just really went crazy with the Cougar Ken. I went too far, so I knew to stop earlier.
So when I read the alpha version of this, what version was that of the 9?
You probably read about edit number 3. So it takes me about 3 edits to get to something I would present to somebody for criticism.
Okay.
And my habit is a lot of writers either write too long or too short. A whole lot of people write too short, and I'm one of those people. I will write, about 3/4 of what the finished novel looks like. And so I don't have enough description. I don't have enough, description on the dialogue. A lot of things need to be tweaked. And that happened in this one too. And so what happens is it starts growing as you edit. So you might start with 60,000 words, and you might end up at 75, and that's what happened here. ended up with about 75,000 words.
Actually, when I read it, that third version, you had 62,000, and you were telling me at that time I need to get it up over 70,000. So I knew you had kind of a target, right?
And it just happens naturally. It just, if you edit your first your early draft and you keep on improving it and adding to it, generally what happens is you need more definition, you need more description, you need more, a lot of things in 100, 200, 300, 400 different places. And so the thing just grows bit by bit. And so you don't really, that's the way I am. Other people, so there are some people who overwrite and just have to cut back, but I'm not one of those. And
So
part of it's because of Time Life, because they taught me to write very tight stuff.
right.
And their books were, in fact, their books were laid out in dummy type. In some series, the pages were laid out in dummy type, and the writers had to write to the line count that they were presented with, whether they liked it or not. So you might have 2 lines underneath a caption, under a picture to write a caption, and you had 2 lines, and that was it. You had to figure out how to get everything into that 2 lines.
That makes sense.
So
have you created a new category with this book? Because you said you were having a hard time categorizing it. I mean, to me, it's a satirical, comedic, historical novel. Like that almost doesn't make sense.
I think I might have. One of my reviewers said, "Have you ever seen a supernatural satiric novel? A paranormal satire, and they're pretty rare. Let's put it that way." So I've probably written something pretty unusual. I don't know. We'll see. There are paranormal comedies though.
You're going to force Amazon and Barnes and Noble and all these groups to have to come up with a new category just for the Potusgeists.
I hope so. Yeah.
It is delightful. So tell us a little bit about you were kind of struggling with, did you want to write this book? Did you not? You said you might even lost some sleep over it. Eventually you just had to write it. What's that process like?
Well, I got frustrated with it early on because some of the scenes weren't coming out very well. And what I discovered was the parts about the ghosts were coming out very easily. But the parts about the other characters weren't, and I didn't like them. So I didn't like the tone of some of the other scenes. And so I was kind of stuck, especially stuck on Patty Pitypander, because I had made her really ditzy in The Cougar Candidate. And I didn't think she looked good as president, being as ditzy as she was back then. Right. So I had to tone her down a little bit to make her palatable and believable. So I did. Eventually I did. And I knew I had to get this. When I kept reading the good parts of the book, they kind of, the good parts of the book kind of insisted that I finish it. I would read the good parts and I go, I've got to finish this book. I mean, I'm stuck here, but I've got to somehow plow my way through the bad parts and replace the stuff and rewrite this stuff. And so that's where I was for a long time. But then I got a new burst of energy and I finished it. So.
And of course, you were going through your own health challenges at this time, so it's even more impressive how great the product came out. And just amazing that I know it gave you something to refocus on as well. But I just want to compliment you that the product came out so good after everything you went through.
Well, thank you. Yeah, I had a little bout with leukemia there, and so I had a bone marrow transplant. And as I was recovering from all that, I had this project in front of me, and I hadn't finished it. I had been stuck on it for a while, and so I dusted it off, and I found that I had some energy, some renewed energy, because I hadn't been working on it for a while. Somehow, all of a sudden, stuff just started flowing. So,
you think the break was good for you then?
It actually was. I mean, I think I kind of restored my creative juices, and I got a new look at it, And
so
I had kind of a what the hell attitude to it at that point.
Right. And sometimes a break is good. Just leave it for 6 months and come back to it. Yeah. So do you end up liking Patty Pitypander after her third edition in your series? Or
Oh yeah, I like Patty Pitypander.
You like her?
She's full of flaws. She's a little bit she has a fantasy issue, basically. She sees things that aren't really there. She imagines things that aren't true. She's shallow. Um, she's selfish. She's egotistical.
Entitled.
Entitled, yes. And on the other hand, she also has fierce determination to succeed. So and that's what pulls her through.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. She has a lot of fortitude. And I actually did not like her in the second book, but I actually liked her in this book. I agree with you on that. So, what about the romance novels? What is it with that? Is that your way to allow her to be the person who can fantasize about the younger man, or what was the?
Yeah, that was in the Cougar Candidate. She was reading romance novels. She basically has a whole stack of them, and she reads them like people eat potato chips. I mean, she just imbibes them practically. And they give her all kinds of ideas, and that's why it kind of feeds her lust for young men. And she lives right on the coast in California in the Cougar Candidate, so she's watching these surfer boys all day long, and she has a huge pool outside pool
Right.
at her
And being ignored by her husband, which doesn't help. Right.
She's been ignored by her husband, so she's not getting any attention at all. And she has this huge mansion right on the ocean. And so she has way too much time on her hands. And that's where the Cougar Candidate is, basically. And so that's where she starts with the Cougar Candidate, and she runs for president, and that's a different story. But anyway, she's the same person in the Potusgeists, except now she's in Washington. She's in a completely different situation. And she's so hemmed in by all the things around her that she really can't. She doesn't do anything about about her attraction to young men. Let's put it that way.
That's right. It's absolutely true. So, out of the presidents and first ladies, did you really enjoy researching some of those? Which are the ones did you enjoy the most? And do you think you captured the characters the way you'd like to in terms of the Potusgeists themselves?
My favorite character to write was John Adams, because he's kind of a curmudgeon, and he's just kind of fun to write about.
He's grumpy.
Yeah. And Thomas Jefferson was the one I most wanted to write about, because I was trying to. He was going to be my main character from the get-go, but he's brilliant, and the challenge with him is to write something that sounds brilliant, basically, because it would be brilliant coming from him.
Mm-hmm.
From Adams, I just had to make him curmudgeonly.
Mm-hmm.
So there are a lot of presidents and first ladies in this book, and that's just the beginning of it, basically. There's Madison, James Madison. There's Andrew Jackson, Abraham Lincoln, Mary Todd Lincoln, Harry Truman, and is mentioned. William Henry Harrison, Dolly Madison, Abigail Adams,
Ulysses Grant.
Ulysses Grant, Franklin Pierce. Let's see, McKinley is in there. Teddy Roosevelt and Eleanor Roosevelt. So
and James and Dolly Madison, of course. Right?
Yes. And then there's other first ladies in there.
And I thought you captured them very well. Even the first ladies, you kind of got their personalities right. I mean, Dolly Madison was always trying to placate everybody, and she was trying to make everybody get along. Yep. She was the generous host, and you had Abigail Adams, who was kind of a curmudgeon like her husband. Was kind of angry at everybody and always wanting to get revenge. And
and I use a lot of the ghost lore that exists, to write the book. I used almost everything I had that was, the known ghost sightings, and there are quite a lot, actually. I could go over some of those if you like.
Yeah, let's take a look at some of the real ones you used.
Okay. Well, Abraham Lincoln is the ghost that actually appears most often in the White House. He shows up when the country's in trouble. Mm-hmm. And his wife, Mary Todd Lincoln, herself believed in ghosts and had seances in the Red Room. Mm-hmm. And to contact her two dead sons, one of whom, Willie Lincoln, died while Lincoln was in office. And Lincoln was also seen was seen as a ghost by Winston Churchill and Queen Wilhelmina of the Netherlands. He tends to hang around in the Lincoln bedroom, which is kind of a historically restored room that's kind of spooky anyway. You just look at the picture of it, it just looks spooky. It looks like a ghost would be sitting there.
I didn't realize the Winston Churchill connection until you told me about that. That's interesting. Winston Churchill in the Lincoln bedroom.
That room is really it's got an issue, but Ronald Reagan said his dog wouldn't even go into it.
Wow.
Yeah, it would just stand out there and bark. And outside of it, it's the one room in the White House that Reagan's dog wouldn't go into.
Wow.
Harry Truman was convinced that there were ghosts in the White House. He would imagine them coming out of the portraits on the wall, give him advice. And he used to write his wife that she'd better come home soon and rescue him before the ghost carried him off. Andrew Jackson has been heard swearing up and down the halls. Of course, he would be swearing because that's what he would do. William Henry Harrison, who was the first president who actually died in the White House itself after his 1 month stay as president. He died soon after his inauguration because he caught a virus during his inauguration. He's been seen in the attic looking for something he left behind. Dolly Madison has been hanging around the rose garden, protecting it. Abigail Adams has been seen hanging her laundry in the East Room, usually sheets, I think.
Wow.
There's a guy named, and one thing I didn't use, there's the owner of the White House before it was the White House, a guy named David Burns, and he shows up once in a while and says, "I'm David Burns," like that. And so he's been seen from time to time. Then the daughter of Mary Surratt, the woman who was had the boarding house for the Lincoln conspirators, her daughter was named Anna, and Anna will come knocking at the door and ask for clemency for her mother, who was hanged as a Lincoln conspirator.
Wow. Amazing.
And then there's Thomas Jefferson, of course, my leading man, who has been seen or heard actually in the Yellow Oval Room, which is the big room on the south side facing the south lawn that you see with the big curved front. You know, there's two sides of the White House, the curved front on one side and kind of the square off front on the north side. Well, this is on the south side. It's the big room in the middle. So he sits there playing his violin, and he used to play his violin for about 3 hours a day while he was president. So,
do you know which presidents said that they've heard him playing? I mean, I know they hear him.
It was Mary Todd Lincoln actually said, "I think that's Mr. Jefferson." She would say she's hearing him, playing in the Yellow Oval Room.
Wow. And the Yellow Oval Room plays a prominent role in this book. How did you decide that? And you had a couple rooms that were kind of very prominent.
Well, it was because of that story that I put the Jefferson in the Yellow Oval Room, so he pops up there a lot. It's his daily, his daily habit to play his violin, practice every day.
I noticed you added in his bird too. The bird was there.
Yeah, yes, he had a bird. Yes, he had a bird. I think you told me about that.
Named Dick. Yep.
Named Dick. Yes, he had a mockingbird named Dick that he would perch on his shoulder while he was playing the violin.
Right, and chirp to it. You'd actually sing with him.
Yes. So all that's in the book, and I even have the music that he was playing. He used to like play Corelli. Basically, he liked to play Corelli. So he's playing Corelli in the Yellow Oval Room with.
Actually, that music we had leading into this program tonight is Jefferson and Liberty, and you recommended it, and that would be something I would think he would like, that kind of piece.
Yeah, well, actually, I'm sure he would love to. He probably did play it. I'm sure he did. He would show up at parties, and this has nothing to do with the White House, but he would show up at parties around Monticello all the time to play his fiddle, basically. It's an accomplished violinist.
Absolutely, no question. What about Lincoln's son? Was that part of it?
Yeah, I have Willie Lincoln playing in the fountain, basically, from time to time. He's been seen in the fountain, the water fountain on one side, on the south lawn. So he He doesn't talk or anything like that, but he's seen.
Is there enough evidence by people that have researched this that you're convinced that some of them stories might be accurate? I mean, some might not be, but is there enough evidence?
I I think there might be some evidence actually. I've never seen a ghost myself. As I researched in the book, 18% of Americans say they've seen ghosts. I haven't seen a ghost, but it's a pretty common phenomenon for people to think they've seen ghosts. And some of the characters, some of the people, the actual historical characters, like Winston Churchill and Queen Wilhelmina, actually thought they saw Lincoln. So um, these weren't all crackpots. I mean, Mary Lincoln probably was, but I think Winston
Mhm.
Churchill probably wasn't.
So, how did you research the White House itself? Because it's so elaborate in every scene. I mean, even the scene where the French prime minister comes for the state visit. And by the way, I think that's the funniest scene in the whole movie. And I won't tell everybody what happens because I want you to read the book. But
Right.
how did you lay the White House out in your mind, and how did you lay it out so that you could describe it, each of the rooms?
Well, I realized early on that I was going to need floor plans of the entire White House and every floor. There are actually 6 floors in the White House. Most people don't know that, but there's floors that the kitchen floors and stuff like that are below decks.
Mhm.
And there's the attic and stuff like that. So um, I needed floor plans for everything, including the West Wing, which is an annex in effect that was built much later than the White House. Um, and so I had floor plans, and fortunately all this stuff is really easy to get on the internet, which is why I needed it too, because I couldn't be writing something and have somebody tell me no, she couldn't do that because she can't walk from that room to that room, or she couldn't look out that window and see that. So I had to know exactly where she was at all times and which window she'd be looking at and out of, and what she'd see if she did look out of it.
So, would you literally take out a piece of paper and kind of draw, like, okay, she's standing here and she couldn't get over there because it's too far? And would you really consider all that?
I would take out a map actually she was looking out, when somebody was looking out the window, whoever it was, especially when they were looking south. I would have them. I would basically look at a map of Washington,
Mhm.
make sure there was a sight line from that window to that, like to see the Washington Monument or the Jefferson Memorial. You have to be in a certain place, and if you can see them if you're looking out the window in the
Mhm.
Oval Office. But I had to make sure of that.
Fascinating. Wow. And then let's talk about Nigel. Nigel obviously appears in the second book as well and has a big part there, but then he has a pretty prominent role in this book as well. What's your thought about Nigel? How did you develop that character? How did he evolve? And why did a Britishman end up being the chief of staff of the President of the United States?
Well, I needed somebody basically in the Cougar candidate who was going to come get Patty and make her run for president. And he just popped into my head. I have an affection for British people, so I decided to bring a British guy, a British immigrant, basically, who had moved to the United States many years before. He's Oxford educated, and he's a Los Angeles, he's a Hollywood divorce attorney, basically, who's become a Democratic operative.
Mhm.
And he shows up at the beginning of the Cougar candidate and talks Patty into running for president because the Speaker of the House, who was going to be running for president, has just been implicated in a blackface scandal. So they need somebody fast. So they get Patty Pitypander, the ex-governor of California, who has lost her race for to be reelected to the governorship, and he digs her up basically and gets her going
Mhm.
to run for president. So he's a know-it-all basically, and he helps me basically he helps her basically think because she's ditzy.
Mhm.
Um, so he's very useful as a character because he can know things that
He's
she
very
doesn't.
wise. He's very politically astute. He's very connected.
And he's loyal. He's
He's
loyal, and
incredibly loyal, but he also knows all of her faults. So he knows both
exactly.
sides of the coin.
He's
Yeah.
he's terrified of some of her faults too, but he sticks with her because he needs her, and she needs him too because he's the brain basically. Uh,
Yeah.
uh,
And he's very skeptical along with everybody else about the ghosts at first, right?
that's
But
right. He doesn't believe in the ghosts in Potusgeists at first, so he has to be convinced. We won't
Absolutely.
go further than that, though. Don't want to tell the plot.
No doubt. No doubt about it. So some of the scenes that got put onto the cutting room floor, do you think some of those could be the basis of Potusgeists 2, or you planning to use any of that material? You think you could resuscitate any of it?
No, I tried my best to resuscitate those scenes. I really did. I don't think I'm going to be able to use them, but there's tons of material. I don't even need those old dead scenes. I can cook up a whole lot more stuff because I barely scratched the surface of the history. There are so many presidents I couldn't get to. I mean, you can't have in a novel but so many characters, right? So you have to focus on a few. You can have a lot of minor characters coming and going, but you have to focus on a select handful of characters.
So can you tell the rule that you had for this book about how you contained the ghosts and where they could go, where they couldn't go? And because you had kind of a rule there, and that also prevented you from including some.
Yes, I had to whittle down the number of ghosts. So number one, as we learn later in the book, the ghosts have a rule of their own where they don't admit the more recent ghosts. So I don't have to worry about anybody after about 1950.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't want to worry about them anyway, because that would get me into political issues that I didn't want to get into. I scrupulously try to make this book funny for everybody so
Mm-hmm.
that nobody is offended, and I'm not dealing with any recent presidents.
Mm-hmm.
I might change that book, the next book, but I don't know. But anyway, that cut down the number of ghosts. And then some of the ghosts have the ability to be in one of three places. They can either be haunting the White House, they can be in their coffins, or they can be haunting their former houses, wherever they came from.
Mm-hmm.
So Jefferson could go back to Monticello, where he could be in his grave, or he could be at the White House.
Mm-hmm.
And so the ghosts kind of come and go sometimes. Sometimes they haunt their own houses.
But he couldn't be in Philadelphia, or he couldn't be in Williamsburg.
No, and you can't walk the streets of Washington. So they can walk around the grounds, but they can't leave the grounds.
Mm-hmm.
So that
Is that going to be limiting if you do Potusgeist too, or is that going to limit you, or are you going to
I,
open it up a little bit?
I think there could be other kinds of ghosts in the world. This was just one special kind of ghost, and so we don't know about the other kinds of ghosts that might exist that could travel. So
Interesting.
there have to be there must be traveling ghosts, right? So,
Has to be. Has to be. Absolutely.
right,
Christopher Columbus.
right.
He'd have to be able to travel.
But these particular ghosts only have three choices: it's the White House, their former house, or the grave. So
So one thing I thought you handled really brilliantly in this book was the merge between historical figure and modern day problems, or even modern day technology. How did you do that? I mean, when the ghosts come across modern day technology, don't know what it is, are confounded by it, but try to figure it out, and sometimes cause havoc because of it.
that was where I used Jefferson a lot, because Jefferson, of course, would be fascinated by anything that was modern. Um, he would take to it like a duck to water.
Or
So
any kind of gadget, right?
he loved gadgets. He made gadgets. He invented them. So he was just like Benjamin Franklin that way. He just loved to make gadgets. So he was very inventive. He would be very intrigued by anything new that he saw. So he'd also be extremely puzzled because he wouldn't have the background to understand it. So he spends a lot of time being puzzled right at the beginning of the book. In the first scene, there's a TV remote, and he can't figure out how the remote works. He doesn't even know what all he knows is that it turns on that talking box on the wall, and that has all the pictures on it. And he doesn't know how to work the thing.
And that's how they see Pitypander get inaugurated, right? On
That's
the
right.
talking box.
That's right.
Interesting. Well, you ready to go to some of the mailbag here? We got some great questions we've assembled, even some from people who've already read the book and really love it.
Sure.
I thought maybe we can go to some of those questions and talk about them. So here we go. All right. The first one out of the gate here is if you can kind of talk about how you gathered all the research, all the historical research, how you put it together. Did you keep it in files? Did you print it out? What was your process to kind of gather all the history information?
Okay. I set up a filing system inside of that program I mentioned, Scrivener. It allows you to store everything in one place. You can set up folders to your heart's content for example, for every president. And you can just put put all kinds of files in there in one place, and then they're at your fingertips while you're looking at the screen. That makes things a lot easier to deal with, so that things don't get scattered all over your computer. So that's one tool that I use.
So could you literally flip back and forth from the text to a folder to look at atoms?
Yes. So like when you were doing synopses for me, we would do a brief history of, say, some president, like Andrew Jackson, and I would be able to pull that document up on the screen in a window and read it while in another window I was looking at the text itself that I was writing. So I would be able to refer to it constantly. And so you can open up multiple windows, like 4 or even more windows in Scrivener. And it makes it I'm not trying to make an ad for them basically, but it's a very useful tool.
Fantastic. Yeah, you could absolutely get overloaded with the amount of research that you did for this book. So
the nice thing about it is you can that particular program is one project can hold an unlimited amount of stuff, in effect. And the other thing is that it only pulls up one little file at a time, so it doesn't slow down like a Word file would. So you're only working with one little piece of the book at a time.
And now that you have everything there, you could always leverage that again, right, for your next novel.
Yeah, in fact, they make that really easy. You can just take all those files and just transfer them over to a new project, call it a new book, and you have all the research right there on all the presidents. That's what people do when they do a series.
Oh, that's great. And then you just add some new ones, like you said, some new ghosts that do something else.
That's right.
So next question is Sartini. Is he modeled after anyone in history? How did you come up with that character? Kind of how did you envision him from the very beginning?
Well, Sartini is the vice president. And the Cougar candidate, Patty, needed a vice president. And there was she wanted somebody who was unknown because she didn't want to be overshadowed. So she found this no-name congressman from Ohio named Tony Sartini. And of course, she was of Italian descent, so she was immediately attracted to him. And also, he was young and cute. So he's about 36, 37 years old.
Right.
So she just naturally was attached to him right away. And so she wanted him to be the vice president. So that's how he got to be vice president. And then in the Potusgeists, he's well.
But how do you develop a new character's personality? Like, how do you start on that? You just sit there and start writing words down about the person, or?
I start with a character sheet. Basically, I literally start with I create the characteristics of the character on a piece of on a file, in a file, and I just say I start describing them physically, and I say what they look like, where they come from, their background, what their family is like, who their parents were, what their motivations are, their strengths and weaknesses, and with Sartini, basically, I wanted kind of a glad-handing congressman, kind of a sleazy kind of guy who will say anything, say or do anything to get ahead.
Sleazy, going to be corrupt, or maybe already corrupt.
Yeah. But Patty's kind of corrupt anyway, so that didn't bother her a bit. So.
Makes sense. So, what about 2 Italians? Was that conscious to make them both Italians?
Yeah, actually, she liked the fact that he was Italian. So she's married to an Italian, and she's got a vice president who's an Italian too. So I have nothing against Italians. It's just, I just started with an Italian. It could have been anybody. Could have been a Greek,
So next question is my question. It's about Clint Cranberry, and he is my favorite character in the book. He's a young FBI agent who's in his first job and gets assigned to this almost as a throwaway by the FBI, who doesn't really take this threat seriously. How did you come up with Clint Cranberry? What was the thought process there about having this young guy in the White House?
Well, Patty has an encounter with a ghost. She doesn't know what's going on, and she's terrified. So she she calls in Nigel Winborn, her chief of staff, and tells him she wants somebody from the FBI to investigate this immediately.
Right.
And the FBI, as it turns out, happens to have this little unit of 4 people, only 4 people, the entire FBI, It's not true. Actually, this is fictional. They don't actually have a paranormal unit, but I created a paranormal
Did you
unit.
check on it? Did you go research if they have one?
No, I've thoroughly researched the FBI. They do not have one.
Okay.
There's some people who want them to have one, but they don't.
Mhm.
I'm sure people have made up stories about it,
Because
but
they do have a UFO unit, so that's ironic. They have a UFO unit, but not a paranormal unit.
that's right. So anyway, in the bowels of the FBI, there's this paranormal unit of 4 people, and 3 of them are not available when she calls, or when they call when the White House calls the FBI for a ghost hunter to come over.
Mhm.
But Clint Cranberry is just actually walked into the FBI. He's just graduated and went to the FBI boot camp in Quantico. So he's just graduated. He's been hunting ghosts since he was a kid, which is how he got into it.
Mhm.
And he's an electrical engineer from NC State. So
Mhm.
he has he's studied this a lot. So he makes a very good helper to Patty because she needs somebody to tell her what's going on.
Mhm.
Nigel Winborn has no idea, and he's
You
very
essentially needed someone to be able to go around the White House that wasn't Patty to be able to investigate things, right?
exactly. And
So,
and of course, it needed to be somebody who was gonna gonna believe in her too, because nobody else does.
mhm.
And he does because he's actually seen ghosts before.
Mhm.
So he believes right off the bat, which of course nobody else would.
Right. I
So
came to really, really like him throughout the book. Like I said, he became my favorite character in the book was
well,
Clint, in terms of a real person, not a ghost.
he grew on me too. I used him more and more as the book went on. As the book developed, he got more and more parts, and because he was so useful as a character, and
Mhm.
I needed him to go around the White House and eventually talk to the ghosts in depth. So he learns all kinds of things about them.
And he certainly develops a relationship with the ghost that you guys will have to read when you read the book. That's really great. So, you wrote a short story about, Clint Cranberry. How can the people get that short story so they can, respond to it?
Well, they read the book, and they can join my mailing list. It's at the end of they'll find a link at the end of the book, and they can go straight to my and join my mailing list, and it'll allow them to download a little story about what
Mhm.
happens to Clint.
And I'll put that in the description down below so you guys can click on it and go directly to it. But, again, love the Clint character. You said you called him Quentin at first.
Yeah, I didn't want him to get. At first I did, and I realized it looked too much like Quincy Adams, John Quincy Adams. So I didn't. People called Quincy Adams Quincy, so I didn't want it to create any confusion.
How much, did you use the naming engine within Scrivener, to actually help you name characters, or did you just name most of them yourself?
Uh, I had a lot of, well, some of them came over from Cougar Candidate, and
Okay.
others I did use the naming engine. They have a
Mhm.
name generator there, and you can actually set the name generator to generate names in almost any ethnic group.
Mhm.
So let's say you want German last names, and a I don't know, English first name or something. You can actually do that. You can set the last name to be something and just change the first name. It's very useful. And
Interesting.
it spits out all kinds of names you would never imagine.
So the next question is to tell us a little bit about Mr. Twigs, how you came up with that character,
Yep.
how you developed the character from the beginning, what was his usefulness in the plot?
Well, in the White House, the way White House actually works is there's a head usher, and he's in charge of several other ushers. But there's a head usher, and his office is right next to the front door of the White House. Um, and this person is sometimes it's a really high level person. Actually, they've had retired admirals be the head usher of the White House, so it's a powerful job. And this you don't see them on TV because they're generally part of the operation of the White House itself behind the scenes. But He is in charge of state dinners, and he's in charge of all kinds of stuff. And he's in charge of all these people who run the White House, like the housekeeping staff and security, other kinds of other parts of the staff that make the White House function.
Mm-hmm.
So it's an important management job, actually. So I needed a head usher, and so I worked him into the plot. And as the plot grew and developed, his part got bigger and bigger. He becomes actually kind of a confidant of Patty Pitypander as the plot goes on.
Absolutely. So, and some of these longtime employees of the White House who served multiple presidents, of course, had some interaction with the Potusgeists, correct?
Oh yes, and he was one of them. Actually, he doesn't want to admit it, but he's seen the ghosts too.
Mm-hmm.
So he knows all about the Potusgeists
Mm-hmm.
from well, there's a lot of the place comes with a lot of ghost lore anyway. So the stories run with the White House anyway,
Mm-hmm.
and of course, Twigs has been there a long time, so he knows them.
Do you think if they interviewed the current staff today, if let's say they'd been serving 4 or 5 presidents, if they'd have some ghost stories as well?
They might.
Thought maybe.
I don't know. I don't know. Uh, they, yeah, the head usher has been turning over pretty quickly lately with a lot of the political upheavals we've had in the United States. So, but there were some head ushers that stayed for a long time.
There's so many fascinating parts of history around the White House, but the ghost stories might be one of the most fascinating of all. So we really appreciate you bringing it to us. So the next one is tell us about Olympia, who's the mother of Patty Pitypander and her pickleball ladies, and how you
Yes.
put that group together.
Olympia is about 88 years old. She's Patty's mother. She lives at the she lives in a retirement home in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, and she's in very good shape physically. She plays. She heads a pickleball team, and she comes running to Patty's aid when she realizes that Patty's having trouble with something. She doesn't know what it is, and Patty tells her about the ghosts. Yeah. So Olympia is her name is Olympia Ingratelli. She was obviously she was the wife of Patty's father, who was the mayor of Boston. He was a mayor at a time when the mayors were had to deal with a mob, and
And we're probably corrupt just to stay in power, right?
yes.
I would think.
Yeah, Patty's upbringing is kind of strange because she was a mayor's daughter, and she thought her father was very powerful, and so she envied him, and wanted to become him.
Mm-hmm.
That's how she got her drive to become president.
Mm-hmm. That makes sense. Now, Olympia is incredibly energetic in this book at 93 years old, and she has some incredibly energetic scenes. How did you decide to make her like that rather than, wheelchair ridden?
I wanted to give her some spirit, and I think she's 88, as I recall. She's
okay.
Yeah, she's not quite in her 90s, but she's in very good shape. Yeah, she's the coach of a pickleball team, and she brings her pickleball players with her from the retirement home when she needs them.
Mm-hmm.
When she needs support in Washington.
Mm-hmm. That's awesome. I love the pickleball angle, obviously, because I love to play. So I appreciate you putting that in there. So as soon as you release this book, and I think the official launch was this past weekend, is that correct?
That's right.
Was there anything you immediately regretted that you wish you put in the book, or a character or a scene? I know every author feels that way, that, oh, darn it, if I had just done this one little angle, or if I just changed the ending just a little bit.
No, well, no, not really. I didn't want the book to be too long. I've had reviewers tell me that I've had a couple of people say they wish it would go on for another 20 chapters, but that's a good thing. That's what I want to hear, that kind of thing. That means they liked it. But I don't really think it would have been better if it was longer. There was no way I could handle too many presidents, so I had to cut back on them. So I don't regret that. But there is so much history in the White House. The only thing I regret is that I couldn't do more of it, but there was no way. So there's so much history in the White House to choose from that you just have to pick.
Mhm. Absolutely. So some of your other scenes kind of outside of the White House, there aren't very many of them, but did you do any research around the Capitol or around some of the other scenes you had to put into the book, or were those just from general knowledge?
Just from general knowledge. I didn't have to do much because I didn't let her get out. I didn't let Patty get out of the White House very much. And so there wasn't much to do there. She starts the book at the Capitol building. She goes to New York once. She goes to the Lincoln Memorial once, and that's about it. So there's not much. She doesn't. I don't let her out very much. In the earlier versions of the book, the earlier outlines, I had her leaving Washington a lot more, and that's what I realized wasn't working. It was one of the things that wasn't working. I wanted her in the White House. I wanted this whole thing to be about the ghosts and
Right.
history. This whole
Yeah,
book, the whole book really is kind of a celebration of American history.
it is. It really is. And I was going to ask you about that. As I read each of these characters that were Potusgeists, I was amazed at how much you adhered to their history, their individual history, like Andrew Jackson playing poker and James Madison always trying to adhere to the rules. And I was always admonishing all the other ghosts for making sure they stuck to the rules. And Jeff,
I actually researched which presidents played poker.
right, right. I
And you
know.
can do that with the internet. It's just an amazing device.
It's incredible that you adhere to it so well. And of course, Jefferson not liking to speak in public, but liking to write everything down and write letters to Patty Pitypander. And you mentioned Adams being kind of gruff and not in a good mood most of the time, that kind of thing. So how did you make sure you adhered to their personalities? And did you have to go back and rework that in your various drafts?
Well, I I went a lot deeper with the main characters, like Adams and Jefferson, and I was kind of familiar with them anyway. So I'd already read biographies of both of those guys. So I didn't need to do quite as much with them. Um, and so what I really needed was information on the people, kind of the minor presidents that I just didn't know a whole lot about, and especially
Right.
the first ladies. Like I didn't know anything about,
Hmm.
you know, uh, Mrs. Hayes. You
Hmm.
know, I didn't know a thing about her until I did research on her. So I mostly had to fill in on the more minor presidents and first ladies.
Hmm. Did you have situations like with Eleanor Roosevelt where you thought you knew the character, but then you went and researched them, you learned a lot about them, and there were things you didn't realize about them?
Yeah, of course, I'm so old that I could actually remember when she was alive, but she died when I was a kid, and that she was kind of an inspiration to my generation, and so there were things I knew about her anyway, but there were a lot of things that she said that I didn't know, so I had a lot of research done to do on her on
Mhm.
quotations that she made, because I actually use some of her quotations in the book.
Right.
So she's actually speaking some things that she actually did say in life. And
Hmm.
in fact, I did that with several characters where I could, I actually worked in actual things that people said. Um,
Right.
and
And I liked how you had Dolly. Of course, she was always the consummate host. After James died and she retired, she ended up moving back to Washington, D.C., and she ended up being a consultant to first ladies for several presidents afterwards, and
yes,
and
yes,
and help them put on big balls at the White House. And so she would have loved that. She really was that kind of
she
party.
was, she was kind of the queen of the social scene in Washington for a long time.
Hmm.
I mean, after she was not in the White House any longer.
Hmm. That's absolutely right.
There were a lot of first ladies actually that when I went through all the first ladies, there were a lot of them that were kind of shy and retiring, kind of faded into the background. I picked out the ones that I thought were most interesting, but there were quite a few actually that were just didn't come out into public very much, basically. And they
Hmm.
didn't they weren't very public at all, and they didn't like Washington very much or whatever. But there were several like that, so they wouldn't make good characters. So I went after people like Dolly Madison and Abigail Adams and Eleanor Roosevelt because they're so interesting.
Hmm. So, do you see this novel becoming potentially a movie one day? Do you think it'd be a really good movie if it was cast well?
I've had somebody, one of my reviewers, said, I want to see this thing on stage. And
Wow.
he insists that this thing should be a stage play. And I think you've talked to somebody who makes movies, but
Yes, he's a producer.
I'll be happy for it to see it and be a movie. I think it would be natural. It really would be. It would lend itself to it.
I'm imagining what the set would look like, creating a custom Oval Office and having the yellow room and having Jefferson play the violin. Yeah, I think it'd be fantastic.
Yeah, my friend who said it should be a stage play said, well, if somebody can make a movie out of Hamilton, this thing is much more natural than Hamilton.
I agree. No, I think it'd be a fantastic movie. It really would. I would love to see it on the screen. So, what are you planning to do next? What are you planning to write next? Do you have some things formulating in your mind already?
Yeah, I'm beginning to think about a sequel to the Potusgeists. I want to see what the reaction to it is and see if people want more of it. And if they do, there's more where that came from. There's a whole lot more history to explore. A lot of presidents I couldn't get to, and there's a whole lot more in Patty's term. Her first term is I've only gotten into about about 6 months into her term. The whole story takes place in 6 months. So she's got a lot of her first term left, much less her second term. So I could go.
I could finish her term. I could do her second term. I could do one on Clint Cranberry. I could do one just on the Potusgeists. Like, what do you?
Yeah, all of those are possibilities.
Or maybe all of the above.
Well, I can't do them all in one book, but I can. I definitely can. There's a whole lot of room to do more with the Potusgeists. So,
well, you know what? Everybody tonight watching the program, drop us a comment down below. Drop one to Bill. And tell him what you think should be the next volume that comes out of his authorship. We'd love to hear from you. So, Bill, let's talk about how you can get this book. Paperback's already on sale at Amazon. You can also get the ebook at Amazon, but on Kindle Unlimited, of course, you get it for free. Also at Barnes & Noble, you can order it there and have it shipped to you at barnesandnoble.com and then go pick it up later. So that's another option. And then you can also get lots of information on all three of Bill's novels at willworsley.com and join his mailing list. And you can obviously read that short story that he's done on Clint Cranberry. And it's a really excellent, by the way. It got me excited for a Clint Cranberry novel one day. So anything else you wanted to recommend to people to try to get the book?
No, that's the ways to get it. And if you do get it, though, if you do read the book, please leave a review, because I love reviews. Like all authors, we live for reviews.
Absolutely. And I know when I left, the review is on both Amazon and Goodreads. So go out there and take a look at both of those and leave a review in both places. Be a great thing to do. So for people to get in touch with you, Bill, we got you at willworsley.com as one way to contact you. Another way would be your Facebook page, Will Worsley Author. And then there's willworsley2@gmail.com, which is your personal email.
That's right.
Any other ways for folks to reach out to you?
No, that should be enough.
Okay, great. Well, Bill, tell us some of your final thoughts as we review this particular novel and we move on to your next piece of work.
Well, I think it's been a fun journey with this book, and I'm looking forward to the next one. I can't wait to figure out some other stories to tell.
Going to be a lot of fun to see what you do with it, Bill. I'm really excited about it. And thank you so much for joining Traveling Through History. Your book was the inspiration for this channel. So I can't thank you enough for coming on tonight and telling us about the Potusgeists and what an exciting and fun novel it is.
Well, thank you.
And we'll see you next time. And everyone, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and go contact Bill and get on his mailing list. And make sure you get informed as to his next work that's coming out. All right. Thank you very much. Bill, have a great night. Everyone have a good night.